within all the 3 planetary systems, nor am I in want of anything, nor have I need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in work. Text 23. Ariyaham navarteyam jatu karmanya tandritaha mama vartmanu vartante manusha partha sarvashaha. For if I did not engage in work, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. Text 24. Utsideyor ime lokad koryam karma chedaham sankarasya chakartasyam upahanyami ma prajaha. If I should seize the work, then all these worlds will be put to ruination. I would also be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all sentient beings. Text 25. Sakta karmanya avidvamso yatha kurvanti bharata paryad vidvams tatha saktash chikir shurloka samgraham. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, similarly the learned may also act, but without attachment for the sake of leading people in the right path. Text 26. Buddhi bhedam janayed agyanam karma sanginam troshayet sarva karmani vidhan yukta samacharan. Let not the wise disrupt the minds of the ignorant who are attached to fruit of action. They should not be encouraged to refrain from work, but to engage in work in the spirit of devotion. Text 27, famous shloka. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha hankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. A bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the 3 modes of material nature, thinks himself to be the doer of activities, which are in actuality carried out by nature. So we can go back to text number 17. We can read the translation and purport. Would anybody like to read? Would you like to read? We have a microphone.
Starting from the translation.
Yeah, that's okay.
One who is, however, taking pleasure in the self, who is illumined in the self, who rejoices in and is satisfied with the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. Purport. A person who is fully Krishna conscious and is fully satisfied by his acts in Krishna consciousness no longer has any duty to perform. Due to his being Krishna conscious, all impiety within is instantly cleansed, an effect of many, many thousands of yajna performances. By such clearing of consciousness, one becomes fully confident of his eternal position in relationship with the Supreme. His duty thus becomes self-illuminated by the grace of the Lord, and therefore he no longer has any obligations to the Vedic injunctions. Such a Krishna-conscious person is no longer interested in material activities and no longer takes pleasure in material arrangements like wine, women, and similar infatuations.
Maharaj, would you like to make a comment? Or 2 or 3?
Because self-realization is the goal of human life, as stated in the Vedanta Sutra, Atasta Brahma Jigyasa, to become self-realized, to realize the self, Brahman. That's the goal. So one who's in that position, he has nothing else to do. He has no other duties. And that means he's not bound by national duties, international duties, family duties, any type of duties, moral duties, it's all included. Because by serving, by being engaged in Krishna consciousness and being absorbed in Krishna, the self, being absorbed in the self means, or taking pleasure in the self, means he's realizing that he's not the body. Otherwise, he's not taking pleasure in the self, because the body, if we think we're the body, then we're taking pleasure in the body. And that's not transcendental. So he realizes that he's not the body, he's the spirit soul, and that where does his pleasure come from? Not from the flesh, not from material things, not from wine, women, and other similar infatuations, not from profit, adoration, distinction, not from any of those things that the people in the material world are after, the ones who think they're the body. So he has nothing else to do except serve Krishna. His duties are all fulfilled. Now the rest of the people may not think so. They may disagree. They may say you're being neglectful of so many things that you should do. You're an American, you have a duty. They try to give him so many other duties. A classic example of this was when Bharat Maharaj took his next birth after the deer. He became a deer, and then he became a Brahmin, Jad Bharat. And this time, he had remembered all of his previous births. So he remembered how he got entangled. Trying to satisfy his responsibilities to society and what have you, but not purely on the spiritual platform. But he became entangled. So this time he was determined not to become entangled. So much so that even when his father, who was a good Brahmana, tried to teach him how to perform the Brahminical acts, more goodness, he wouldn't even do it. He didn't want to do it because he knew, I can get entangled by this. If I start doing this, become attached to doing this, then I'll get reactions. They may be good reactions, but good reactions are not really good reactions. If they keep you in the material world, it's not a good reaction. So he thought, I don't want any karma. I don't want any activities in the material world. Now, how would someone achieve that? Generally, they would think, well, I won't do anything. I won't perform any activities. But that's not possible. You can't. No one can stop acting even for a moment. He's thinking. He's responsible for his thoughts, isn't it? Maybe not as responsible for the thoughts as the deeds, but he's still responsible for the thoughts. If he has bad thoughts, evil thoughts, then people can tell that. And he's not appreciated. He's always thinking bad about everyone, or not thinking, maybe not. He should be thinking about others, but he's just thinking about himself. So everyone has to act. He can't stop acting. So he knew that. So instead of carrying out the duties that his father gave him, he managed to serve Krishna through that episode. His father saying, okay, first put the water here, then do the achman, and he put the water in the other one. Purposely did that. But it was serving Krishna. There's other stories of devotees who were drafted into the armies, and the army was determined to make them soldier. They dressed him up like a soldier, although he didn't want anything to do with it, but you have to do this, it's your duty. So they would try to teach him to shoot the gun, and they'd say, okay, now shoot there. He'd shoot up here and shoot over there. He did it purposely because he didn't want them to think he could shoot at all. And even still, what happened was, so they tried to get him to shoot the bullseye target. So he made sure he was way up in the sky. No way he could hit anything. But sure enough, afterwards, the head of the corporal, or whatever it was, he went over the target, bullseye. And the so-called soldier knew it wasn't possible. Yeah. But then the commander in charge above him said, wait, let's take a look. No, that's from a different. They use the targets again, not army. So, no, that wasn't, he didn't make it. So that was, you may think it was just a kind of a joke, but he didn't want to show any abilities at all. If he showed any affinity or ability, then he would have been on front of the war or attacks. They were coming every time. So that's an example of he has no duty. And they kept saying, you have to do this. And he kept saying, no, I'm doing my service to God. That's the best service for everyone. Everyone is benefited if someone serves God. So they couldn't argue with that. They had to kind of go along with it. But anyway, this is one aspect of what it means to take pleasure in himself.
Right. Thank you, Maharaj. Sounds like a very wise devotee to do such antics in such a situation. So this third chapter, Karma Yoga, it's very nice. You're familiar with the Bhagavad Gita a little, right? Not so much Prabhupada's edition. So the second chapter is pretty much an overview of the Bhagavad Gita. It has one of the most amount of text, and it gives a whole summary. And this chapter actually starts off with Arjuna telling Krishna, he says, "O Janardhan, why do you urge me to engage in the ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruit of work? My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively what is most beneficial for me." And these words that are used are buddhi and karmani. So it's intelligence, buddhi, and karmani, work. So Krishna seemingly tells Arjuna that you should, renounce this and you should take to the path of intelligence and wisdom. But then at the same time he says work. And Arjuna is trying to figure out what that means, and he thinks it's counterintuitive. Buddhi is the path of wisdom, knowledge, renunciation. Karma is the path of work. So here Krishna's enlightening Arjuna and how one can work in, what's the word? Basically perform karma without attachment. So by performing karma without attachment, one performs his duty, but he's not attached to the results. And then, so Krishna begins explaining here, and he's talking about the nature of the self, somebody who is self-situated. And then he goes on to say that he performs work, even though he has nothing to do. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he can do whatever he wants to do, but he still performs work just because other people will follow, which is the very famous text where Krishna said that whatever actions great men perform, then common men follow. Text 21. So Krishna says that if he did not engage in his work, everybody would follow his path. And if everybody followed his path because he wasn't doing work, then the whole world would be put to ruination and causing becoming the cause of unwanted population. And why is this significant? Because this was one of Arjuna's doubts. One of his doubts in the beginning was, I can't kill them because if we kill them, then there'll be, mothers and wives left alone, and then the population will go down, and everything will be destroyed because of me. But Krishna is telling him on the contrary, actually, if you don't perform your duty according to the scriptures, then you will be the cause of unwanted population. So the whole Vedic culture is acting in accordance with the scriptures of one's prescribed duties, which is a common theme throughout the Bhagavad Gita. And Arjuna is a kshatriya, he's a warrior. So his duty is to fight, to never turn down fighting. When it's for religious principles, when one is fighting, the most glorious thing is to die on the battlefield. So Arjuna had these doubts and he couldn't decide what to do. And Krishna is telling him, essentially, you need to cultivate this buddhi, this knowledge, but you still act. And then he says, he says in text 25, as the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, similarly the learned may also act, but without attachment for the sake of leading people in the right path. Then he says, let not the wise disrupt the minds of the ignorant who are attached to fruit of action. They should not be encouraged to refrain from work, but to engage in the work of the spirit of devotion. So somebody who's wise and cultivates this buddhi, this knowledge, this spiritual wisdom, this understanding of what's going on in life, it's not that leads them to some artificial renunciation. There's a good example that I like is, imagine we walk in the bank right now and you see all this money. I don't know if they even have money, if it's all digital or what nowadays, but anyways, you walk in and you say, I renounce all of this. I renounce all this money. And what are the bank teller going to tell you? Get out of here, you crack. You're crazy. Yeah, because there's nothing to renounce. It's not yours. So similarly, one can take this path of buddhi yoga, or just cultivation of knowledge, which leads to jnana, wisdom, and then renunciation. But there's nothing to renounce in this world because nothing is ours. So we can try to renounce everything, but what's there to renounce? It's not ours. So proper form of renunciation is utilizing what can be used in Krishna's service or his service. So it's the proper utilization of everything that we encounter. And by doing that, working in a spirit of devotion, then one does not accrue karma because he's working on behalf of Krishna, which he describes somewhere here in this chapter. So then he says, don't disrupt the minds of the ignorant who are attached to fruit of action. They should not be encouraged to refrain from work, but to engage in work in the spirit of devotion. Because Arjuna, he wanted to go to the woods and take up this path of renunciation rather than fighting. And every time I talk about the Bhagavad Gita to people when we're distributing it, I always tell them the premise that Arjuna is going to fight his family. Everybody he knows is on both sides. So, it's like a lose-lose situation. And he says, okay, I want to go to the woods and become a monk. And a lot of people resonate with that. They're like, yeah, life's difficult. I want to take the peaceful path. But, that's where the Bhagavad Gita actually starts. Arjuna surrenders to Krishna. He takes instruction from Krishna, and Krishna says, even if you go to the forest and take up the path of renunciation, you will still fight. You can't avoid it because that's your nature. And he says that we've accumulated our own nature. So in text 27, the last one we read, the bewildered spirit soul under the influence of the three modes of material nature thinks himself to be the doer of activities which are in actuality carried out by nature. So we think we're free to act and do whatever we want to do, but we're actually controlled and manipulated by the conditioning that we have, which is, simplified, that we're products of our environment because we're not in touch with the self. Like the first one that we read, Maharaj is pointing that one who rejoices in the self, he doesn't rejoice in the body. He has nothing to do with his body, which isn't just the material body, it's also the subtle body, the intelligence, the mind, and most importantly, you could say the false ego, this false identification, this persona that we adopt. So the self-realized soul does not rejoice in these things, and he's aware of this. So Krishna says, don't engage others in taking up this path of renunciation, because similarly, they will all have the same problem. If you encourage people to, this is bad, take up renunciation, this and that, then they'll still be subject to their conditioned nature. So it's much better to engage other in devotional service so that they're acting in line with reality. And by doing that, like we just mentioned, that's actual real renunciation, is engaging whatever's available in the service of Krishna. And by doing that, then there will be no reaction. Like Maharaj pointed out, even if we have a good reaction in this life, it's not so good. See, there's a duality, good, bad, hot, cold, you can think of so many, but in the real sense, there's only one duality, that there's spiritual and material. And above that, there actually is no material, it's all spiritual, but due to our polluted consciousness, we see things as being separate. So then we make these distinctions. So we can choose the material, and then there's good and bad, but actually good and bad are both bad because it binds us to the world. But we can choose the spiritual, and then everything is all good. And what makes it good? Because we're putting Krishna in the center. Krishna is the supreme good, supreme harmonizer. Whatever comes in contact with Krishna becomes harmonized, it becomes pure, because Krishna is the source of everything. So things that are disconnected from Krishna, we can know this to be Maya, the illusory energy. This was actually one of the original 4 verses spoken in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where the Lord speaking to Brahma, and he says, any topic, anything that doesn't have to do with me directly or indirectly for that matter, then know it to be Maya, the illusory energy. And just having that little bit of knowledge, which is the foundation of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we can understand what's going on in the world, is that people are, all their knowledge, their whole way of living is disconnected with the Lord, and it leads to darkness. Or maybe we see people that are disconnected to the Lord and they're prospering, but it's only temporary. What goes up must come down. In the Bhagavatam, it describes that how devotees who are taking devotional service of Lord Krishna automatically develop all the good qualities of the demigods, all the good qualities that we want in life. But those who are not in contact with the Lord, all their good qualities are nil, essentially, because it's temporary. They're hovering on a mental platform, and they think this is good, this is good, this is bad, this is bad. So it's just going to, fishtail sway over time. So one day we see it and it seems really good and prosperous, and the next day it's not so prosperous. But a devotee who is striving to act in accordance with the Lord's will, he's in touch with reality because he's trying to please the Lord. He's trying to know the Lord. So then whatever good qualities he has, there's something substantial because it's connected with reality. So does anybody have any comments or questions or thoughts? Yes, Jagannath Prabhu.
I was just wondering this because I was talking with a Christian person, a Christian man yesterday, and I kind of got stumped about what he said. He said that man can't become perfect by works alone because we're so fallen that the only way to receive mercy is through Jesus Christ. So I'm just wondering, like, is that true? Or can we achieve perfection through works alone?
Replace the word Jesus Christ with Guru and think about it. You understand what I'm saying? Tell me. Tell me.
You were saying that only through the mercy of Guru we can be saved.
We can't do works alone. You can't do any kind of activity to warrant the Lord toward perfection. And that's coming from a theist perspective. If it's a non-theist perspective, how can you, people are all working, trying to attain perfection. But you can't by your own work attain perfection in a materialist perspective. And from a spiritual perspective, you can't work alone to attract the Lord's mercy. He can give his mercy freely to whoever he wants to. So he establishes a process of having a guru to approach who's fixed in service to him, and you approach the guru and he gives you prescribed activities, service. So these Christians, they believe that Jesus is God. He's the only way. But for Prabhupada, he described it that Jesus is Guru. He's also God. He's an incarnation of the Lord, Shaktivesha avatar. But he's playing the role of Guru. And you accept Guru, then you follow him and follow his instructions, and it's a very easy way to attain the mercy of the Lord. That makes sense?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a follow-up is like, I felt like that's essentially what you have been saying, that we don't want to perform good work or bad work on this material plane. We have to perform transcendental activities. And then, as you mentioned, we get those activities prescribed. They're of a different quality because they come from a different person, different quality of person.
Yeah, so following the instructions of the Guru, he is one who's actually fixed in devotional service, and he can guide us. And later, Krishna, he says that if we just approach somebody who's fixed in that position, then he can show us the way also, because he's seen the truth, he knows the way. So it's a very essential aspect of life, actually, is accepting a guru. And even these quote unquote Christian people can denounce accepting a guru, but the process of a guru is undeniable. When you're born, you have a mother father to show you and teach you everything. You go to school, you have a teacher. Whatever we know, think about it. Now we take it for granted. We go on YouTube and learn everything, but there's always, an instructor. But nowadays we think, oh, I don't need somebody. I'll figure it out. A good example is, for our car breaks down very quick, we go to a mechanic to see what it's all about. But when it comes to spiritual life, nobody can tell me what to do. I'll figure it out. But if we just approach somebody who has it figured out, and it's not that they figured it out by their own merit, they figured it out by the Lord's mercy coming through a guru, a whole disciplic succession. And we don't have to blindly assess this. We can really observe the symptoms of a guru of purity. And Prabhupada, he gave the example that, how can we know somebody who's genuine, basically, in that regard? And he said, one who's most addicted to God, one who's most addicted to Krishna. So Prabhupada, he did everything for Krishna. This principle of taking whatever's available and using it in Krishna's service. He had so many disciples, so much money, so much everything, even though he started with nothing, but he used it all in Krishna's service, so he didn't get attached at all. It's not his, he's just using it in service. And that way you can always act in the world, but maintain your spiritual consciousness. Rather than I try to meditate, and feel this really high energy or have this insight, but then I have to go to work. I have to deal with people. And then, it's like living two different worlds. So traditionally, yogis, they'd go to the mountains and, do their pranayam, their yoga, meditation, their asanas. But they're away from the whole world so they can really get absorbed. But in this Kali Yuga, that's not recommended. What's recommended is to take the process of simply chanting the Lord's names and rendering devotional service. So we learn how to render devotional service, and you can act in life and not be entangled. And you can also entice others to act in that way. And if they follow these instructions, then very quickly they'll develop realizations of their own and see that, oh yeah, it's so nice to, in this purport that we read, at the end, Prabhupada said that such a Krishna conscious person is no longer interested in material activities and no longer takes pleasure in material arrangements like wine, women, and similar infatuations. One time, Prabhupada, I heard in a lecture, he gave the example that you can imagine the most learned scholar, the most learned scientist, whoever it may be. He can't give these things up. Some form of, wine or intoxication or sex or, other desires of primitive nature, Maybe some will be free from a lot of them, but hardly, very, very, very rare you'll find somebody who doesn't want to do those things at all. But a devotee can come in from day one and give up these things just by taking the process of chanting Hare Krishna, associating with the devotees, taking Krishna Prasad and rendering devotional service. I mean, it's that simple. And from day one, you can hear everything that there is to know. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He enjoys with Srimati Radharani in the spiritual world. They are the center of attention, and life is meant towards serving them. And if you serve them, you'll become more blissful and ecstatic than you could possibly imagine. And Lord Krishna actually came here to demonstrate this. So on the altar here, we worship Gauranatai. You know of Gauranatai? So, here's a picture behind me. There's Lord Chaitanya, who's Krishna himself. He's dressed in yellow. Lord Nityananda, he's dressed in blue. Gaura is Lord Chaitanya in yellow. He's on the right side. And Nitai, Nityananda, he's in blue. He's on the left side. So this is who we worship here on the altar. And Krishna, he appeared as Lord Chaitanya in Eastern India, roughly 500 years ago. So he appeared for two main reasons. You know the reasons? This is what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, but specifically, why did Lord Chaitanya appear? Why did Krishna appear as Lord Chaitanya? That's good. He was worshipping a Shalagram Shila. But Lord Chaitanya appeared to deliver the people of the fallen age of Kali Yuga, which is us, and the internal reason, the more important reason, he wanted to taste the nectar that Srimati Radharani experienced, who's Krishna's consort. You could see in this picture. So Krishna couldn't fathom how much bliss in ecstasy that Srimati Radharani received from serving him, that he wanted to taste it himself, to experience that. So he came as Lord Chaitanya, not as God, but as a devotee of God, so he could taste nectar from serving God, to see how much nectar there actually is in service to God. So when we hear about Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, his life, he exhibits the highest forms of transcendental ecstasy on a regular basis, always absorbed in chanting the holy name. And, the scriptures actually describe symptoms of what this ecstasy looks like, like the limbs, falling, like, I can't explain them properly, but you'll hear them and you'll be like, what? But yeah, I mean, his life is very sweet, very enriching, very mysterious, very, everything. It's very captivating because it's Krishna himself appearing in a certain incarnation to entice us to be interested in taking up devotional service also. And as we render devotional service in that line, we can't experience what Lord Chaitanya experienced, but we can get glimpses of that, little nectar nuggets, and yeah, you give more to Krishna, Krishna gives more to you. And as Krishna gives you more, then you want to give more to Krishna. So then Krishna wants to give you more. And you want to do more for Krishna. And, we're tiny, we're insignificant, but this is the relationship between Krishna and Srimati Radharani. That said that Srimati Radharani would rather she would make arrangements for her friends and everybody to enjoy with Krishna rather than herself first. So she gives to Krishna, she wins Krishna's heart in this way. So Krishna wants to, do something for her, and then it reciprocates infinitely. So how does that tie into what we're hearing here in Karma Yoga? Krishna is not talking about take the path of renunciation and just meditate and sit idle. No, he's saying work for me, do things for me. You love me, do things for me. He says, I don't know which shloka it is, but he says, see if I find it real quick. It's somewhere near the end. Anyways, but he says, just work for me, give everything to me. And, one who does this surely will come to him. So, thank you everybody for hearing. Is there any other comments or questions, thoughts, doubts, burning reflections? Probably not even a burning reflection. What? Oh, one thing I wanted to mention, it doesn't really tie into this. I just wanted to say it because I thought it was interesting. And Maharaj brought up Jada Bharat. I was walking today on the street, I was chanting japa, and I saw these two guys. They were in like a super heated argument. I don't even know why, but like one person was standing at his house and another was on the road, like out of his car. And they were like yelling and like You know, they were like about to fight, but they were like far away and they were like calling each other names and everything. And I'm just trying to like chant Java. And yeah, my first thought was like, oh, here's like two barking dogs. You know, they're just fighting over things where if you take in light of what the Bhagavad Gita is saying, that you're not your body, you're not your mind, you know, we hold on to some idea that builds some kind of pride, some kind of egotism, and then we're trying to like back that up by barking at one another. But then I started thinking about like, oh, what if I went over there and tried to like say something? And it's like a whole bundle of negative energy and you get sucked into it too. And then they want to say something to you. And then, you know, somebody says something to you, you know, you get angry because somebody, you know, brought that anger to me. And I was like, oh, but then I started thinking about Jada Bharat. Jada Bharat, I don't know if you caught the whole story, but he was a king. He renounced the world, took up to devotion, and he got attached to a deer. In his next life, he came back as a deer, and he was aware of what happened. So then in his next life, like Maharaj was saying, he didn't do anything. Like he purposefully act dumb. Jada means dull. Purposefully act dull because he didn't want to get entangled in anything in the world. So, you know, his brothers, his family, other people, they would like spit at him, you know, just talk bad about him, do all these things, but he was completely unattached because he's like, I'm not my body, I'm not this, you know, I'm focused on God, I'm getting out of here. So I was reflecting on that because, you know, somebody may have certain kind of energy somewhere, and just because we encounter it, we get sucked into it. But if we're aware of these principles, then I realize I have nothing to do with this. Why would I react, or why would I get entangled in that way? And that's a gross example. You know, we have to really apply this to our life to get through the more subtle things, because, you know, within our mind, we have desires, we have thoughts that may circulate and all these things. And sometimes it's really helpful to just say, I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my body. I'm not my mind. I'm not these problems. When we identify with the problems, with those things, it creates just that problems. But when we raise our vibration just to Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's much nicer. So, thank you, everybody. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Gauranatai ki jai, Vancha Kapatarubhis Chakripasan Nabheva Chapatitanam Pavani Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.